Let me try and share my screen. Okay, can you see that? Someone give me a thumbs up if you can see it. Great. Okay.
Start recording if that's all right. Just for people who can't come to the event.
Leaning forward, getting really close. Sorry. Yeah. How do I do that?
Oh, it's okay. I'll do it. No worries. I've got it.
Okay. Right. So I'm Alistair. I just finished 4th year last year, and I'm intercalating after that. This talk is basically why I chose medical education. There's a lot of stuff that I might skip, and I might elaborate on different bits. So sorry if I don't stick rigidly to the lecture slides I've made. I'll talk a little bit about the background to the choice I've made and what I think you should consider when making a choice about intercalation. Why medical education can benefit your career, what the lifestyle is like taking a year out from medicine and doing a normal degree, what the course structure is like, what it's actually like to be on the course as well, and a little bit about what I've learned so far. You should consider through all of this that my experience on the course will be different to yours if you're doing it in future years, because obviously there's a pandemic going on. So certain things like being able to practically teach have all been impacted. So what should you consider when you are thinking about intercalating? Firstly, the topic's important. If you know you want to do a certain career, like, I don't know, cardiac surgery, then it may be useful for you, because that's quite a competitive course, to choose an intercalating course that is specific to that, to show that you're interested in it. But if you don't really know what you want to do, or you want a generally useful intercalation, you can't really do better than medical education. I think it's universally useful. You should think about what year you're going to intercalate in. Later years you can do a master's, previous years, younger years, you're limited to a BSc. Also, there are financial implications for doing an intercalation later on. Me doing it now and doing a master's, I don't get access to government funding. I'm funded through the NHS bursary, which sounds good because I don't have to pay it back, but actually it's less money. It's like, for me, it's about 1,500 compared to 7,000 that I was getting before. So there's financial considerations to when you intercalate and what you intercalate in. You should consider what you're going to get out of it as well. Can you get publications out of your chosen topic? In medical education, you can get publications if you work really hard and do a good dissertation. And you should consider the relevance of your topic, your intercalation, to your future career choices. I have no idea. Well, I have ideas about what I want to do, but I'm not certain enough to pick a very specific intercalation, because it may be that then in the future it becomes not as relevant to my career. And of course, are you interested in it? That's got to be your main consideration. I know that the points that you get for FY1, I think, no longer include intercalation. I'm not sure on the details of it because it doesn't affect me. So I'd encourage you to find out about that as well if you're looking at intercalating. But regardless, the main reason you should intercalate is for your future career past FY1 and to gain experience of research, reviewing, doing literature reviews and of the topic that you choose. You should also think about, do you want to, if you have a specific idea in mind, it might be better to do to also look at the research that's being offered by different universities and find something that aligns with that. So how can medical education masters benefit your future career? Well, obviously a doctor primarily is someone who diagnoses and treats and cares for patients, but that's not the end of a doctor's responsibilities. As a doctor, you're almost always, no matter what career path you choose, you're going to be teaching. Doctor, actually in Latin, the etymology of it, the root is, it means teacher. So no matter what you do, your medical education intercalation would be relevant. As I've already mentioned, it's not specialized, which means that no matter what you do, it's going to be relevant. Also, you get experience of research, which again is useful no matter where you go. And it expands your career options. It helps you in your application if you want to take a year out to be a CTF. if you want to be a lecturer in the future, or you want to get involved in educational research, doing this master's is a really good stepping stone. Also, you learn how to learn. As a medical student, I felt that, you know, I think it took me doing this course to find out what the best way for me to learn is. Like, you're appraising the evidence when you're doing this course. You're finding out the optimal ways that masters in the field of pedagogy are saying you should learn. I wish there was more of that just in the curriculum, because like I've struggled throughout trying to find my approach, and I think if I had the background, I'd be a better learner as well as a better teacher. And you have to learn throughout your career, so it's useful to know the evidence. Also, you can get more letters after your name, which is always nice. You can get MSc after him, and also there's the opportunity at Leicester to do a fellowship in higher education, which is a certification to show that you're a good teacher. That's not guaranteed. You have to do teaching and do a reflective log of your teaching to get that. In some ways, it's nicer. You get more free time when you're doing the intercalation than when you're doing normal medicine. In some ways, it's much harder though. You actually have to. I always felt like in medicine, I was learning a little bit about everything, and it's stressful and overwhelming because there's this almost, it feels like it's boundless body of knowledge, and you're just trying to absorb as much of it into your head as you possibly can. Here, you're taking something and you're going into a lot of depth on it. You're doing essays more than you're doing exams. So if that doesn't suit you, you may want to pick a different field to do your intercalation. There's much more free time in independent study, a lot more. I found that really difficult to navigate because, you know, when you're in placement, you kind of have to go in every day, more or less. And that gives you a routine. You're always going to learn something if you go in. Here, if you want to, you can just play video games all day. And that's really nice in some ways, but also, you know, there's a pressure there because there's less accountability. Oh. You can work alongside, what's happening? You can work alongside it as well. I'm a healthcare assistant in A&E at the moment. That's helping me afford the masters as well. And it's good. I recommend doing something like that because it keeps your foot in the door in terms of keeping up some clinical exposure. Because I think I was a bit afraid, you know, taking a year out and then going back, that it would all be foreign to me. So that's a good idea. And of course, no out blocks. I'm just in Leicester all the time. It would be nicer if I wasn't in the middle of a pandemic and I could leave my house, but there you go. I get to spend more time around my housemates and my partner, which is lovely. So it's one contact day a week, whereas with, you know, medical education, you're in every day except the weekend, more or less. Here you have one day where you see your teachers and your tutors. It's a seminar style. There's preparatory work that you kind of have to do. And then there's the seminar itself, there's a lot of discussion. There's a lot of interactivity. There is a lecture slide that they'll go through, but they stop and you discuss as you go along. It's broken down into modules for which there'll be assignments for which you'll get credits. The ones we've done so far are listed there. I've already said that. So it could be, the assignments could be essays. They could be practical teaching assessments as well. So they might watch you do a lecture and see how you do. Then you've got a dissertation that runs alongside. This will be your research, for which you'll have a supervisor who guides you. And Professor Simon Gay oversees the whole thing. He's very experienced and very good. And he'll help you in choosing a supervisor, which I think is really useful because he'll pick someone that's relevant to the research question that you choose to cover. And you go through the steps of what's involved in doing research. So it used to be kind of opaque to me. Like, I remember trying to do an audit in third year and had no idea what I was doing. Now I'm actually going to help out with an audit in A&E, and I actually know what I have to do. I managed to get through a whole audit without really knowing what one was, so I don't know how I did that. What's it like to actually do it? It's not a hard science. It's not like engineering or biology, or to an extent medicine, where you're getting just facts. there's no certain answers. It's a debate, an ongoing debate with theorists suggesting things. There's some, experiment to it, but a lot of that is more observational experiments of like observing in the classroom or interview-based qualitative experiments. So I'd say it's quite close to sociology and psychology in its nature. The people that run the course are teachers who teach teachers and who are interested in education. So you probably, I don't know if Lisa Quinn still teaches on the undergrad in the preclinical. She's heavily involved in teaching here and she's great. Chris Williams, I don't know if any of you know him. He's also really good. All the teachers, Liz Anderson, they're all top notch. So probably more than any other course, you're almost guaranteed to have good teachers because they've all studied it. There aren't opportunities for practical experience embedded in the course. To some extent, you have to go and seek them. They set you up with CTFs to get a bit of experience, which is nice. It may be also, though, like I said at the beginning, it may be because of COVID that I've not had the opportunities in the same way, and that may change. I'd say that's one weakness of the course. I think they should try and include that in as a necessity, but you can go out and get it if you seek it. You're studying alongside physiotherapists at times, doctors. There's a consultant that I'm studying alongside. All the CTFs are involved at one point or another. Everyone's doing a slight, well, there's like 3 different qualifications going on, and you're involved with different people in different modules. It's really nice, actually. You get this feeling of a multidisciplinary approach, and it's a good, I've found that I feel more like a doctor and more like I'm actually going into that career than I do as a medical student. You cover a lot of stuff. Like I've said, there's educational theory in there as it relates just to education. Then you join it up to sort of medical education and medical theory. You discuss what it's all for and what the goals of it should be. Are we training doctors just to be qualified to the GMC guidelines? Should we be training doctors to be kind, empathetic? All those discussions take place. Like I said, it's heavily influenced by psychology as well. You look at instructional design. What's the optimal way to teach a small group compared to a large group? What's the best way to give feedback? What's the role of a teacher? Like I said, and how much is our responsibility to the student compared to the GMC, compared to like the community? You talk about all of that. You cover research methods and the philosophical background behind them. You learn how to conduct a piece of research, which is all invaluable to your career, as I've already mentioned. You learn how to do a literature review, how to appraise evidence, which is of course a key skill for a doctor. You cover it a bit. I remember doing it in first and second year, but I didn't really have a clue. This is a really helpful way of actually, you kind of have to learn it, because if you don't, you won't be able to pass the masters. So that's good. And then you get to do a dissertation as well. At the moment, I literally 15 minutes ago just submitted my ethics proposal, which was a lot of work. That's my dissertation. You get to choose any topic. This is a bit daunting, but you get to choose any topic relating to medical education that hasn't been researched before. So I personally have chosen to look at the nature of learning on placement, and I'm going to conduct interviews with third-year students to look at what makes placement learning good, what makes it bad, and I'm looking at it through the lens of situated learning theory. So that's what I'm personally doing. You can choose something that interests you, and you can just spend loads of time studying it, which will either appeal to you if you like going in deep on something, or not if you like, the general style of learning that's present in medicine. I think, as I've said, it's a much deeper style of learning, so that's one thing to get used to. If there's any third years here, look out for my study. I'll be looking for participants in March to April. If you see it and you want to participate, that might be a really good way of getting some first-hand experience of what data collection is like and how it's done. So a few of us will be doing studies soon, so keep an eye out for those. I'd ask if anyone has questions, but we're doing that at the end, aren't we? Yeah, so that's me done. Sorry, I talked really quick, but I think that's about 15 minutes, so at least I got that right.
That was really good. Thank you so much for telling us all about the degree. We'll have questions at the end, but thank you so much. So next up, our speaker is Umang. So he is currently doing a BSc in medical education at Barts. So I'll pass over to him.
Yeah, hey, I'm Umang, and I think, Alistair, if you don't mind just stopping, do you need to stop to share your screen, or do I need to? Okay, cool, thank you. Yeah, so I'm doing a medical education degree at Barts. Okay, I've just come from my third year, so let's just start the slide. Okay, so yeah, so a bit about me. So I've just finished my third year. It's a bit hectic kind of going into a different university because it's at Barts, so which is in East London. But I'm from London, so I'm just living at my family home at the moment. So it was nice, a new change, a new environment. So I'm just going to talk to you a bit about what the course covers. And yeah, so why did I choose MedEd? Okay, so firstly, I was quite inspired by my prior learning experiences throughout my medical school, like mainly what made some experiences quite negative. So in terms of like, I don't know, anatomy teaching and in the dissection room, it was quite hard to learn. And I was like, oh, what makes that negative? What can we do to improve it? So medical education sounded appealing to me. I've taught before in like the revision societies, I think. Forgot what they're called actually, but yeah, so I've done that, developed my passion for teaching. I wanted to understand how we learn and how can that, you know, better impact me as a learner. And, you know, I think as Alistair was saying before, you know, it's a vital and transferable skill. Okay, teaching, you know, you're going to be doing it throughout being a doctor, you know, whether it's just bedside teaching with a student who asks, you know, or it's like a lecture. So why did I choose Barts? So Barts was actually the first MedEd course in the UK. I wanted to go into a new environment, okay, mainly because I needed a bit of a break from Leicester and medicine in general. I think, again, as like Alistair was saying, it's quite affected by COVID in the terms that, you know, we had to come back in the summer to do our placements, and I just wanted a break, to be fair. There was an opportunity for research, which I liked, and you have the chance to present your research at a medical education conference. Okay, and I really like the course structure. So I actually had an interview for this, and I talked to some of the module leads, and they seemed really nice and friendly as well. So I was like, yeah, sounds good. Okay, so a bit about the course structure. So this is how it's sort of divided. It's a bit different. So it's kind of divided up into 2 semesters. Okay, so our first semester is fundamentals of education, and we have something else called the theory behind teaching and learning. I'll go into more depth in this a bit later. And then we also have a research project and educational research, which is covered, you know, throughout semester 1 and semester 2. We do teaching skills as well and teaching methods across the both semesters. And this semester we've just started assessment, evaluation, quality and curriculum. So what is each one? So fundamentals of education, it's really just focusing on educational theories, getting your grounding on that and the different philosophies. The way this was delivered was PBL, so that stands for problem-based learning. So that happened about once every week. And because of COVID, it was online. So all my courses have been pretty much online, except for a few exceptions. So I was in a group of about 6 people. And problem-based learning is when the teacher sort of takes a step back and lets you sort of discuss for yourself. And yeah, so it's literally just that. We come up with our own learning objectives for each scenario, and then we go away and research and then discuss it the next week. So, you know, we covered things like teaching and learning styles, like what was the best way to teach, what sort of factors should we take into account, what's the best way to learn, and what are the factors affecting teaching and learning. You know, for example, motivation, the different types of motivation, okay, and how you can accommodate to that in your teaching styles, both in small group teaching and in large group teaching. So that ran about once a week, okay, and then so that ran for about 6 weeks. So we had about 6 weeks of PBL, and at the end of it, we had a presentation to do, for which we actually had to interview a teacher and interview a student about their approach to teaching and learning. So that was fun. I think we actually interviewed Lisa Quinn, so she gave some nice ideas about her opinion on teaching and assessment. So that was really useful. So now comes on to the educational research bit. Okay, so we do this alongside the fundamentals of education. So we would have basically twice a week we would have a session. So the focus was, like in Sem 1, was to how to conduct a research study. So you learn the basics, and I think, as Alistair was saying before, the components, like ethics proposal, the writing a research proposal. And then in semester 2, we're supposed to undertake our research project. And I submitted my ethics proposal like last week as well. So before we're paying Alistair, but yeah. So, I mean, so I've particularly chosen actually quite a similar topic to Alistair's actually. It's about how the clinical environment can affect the students' well-being. And there's lots of different factors to take into account there, including situated learning and how that plays into account. But yeah, and again, so we send our research proposal off in when we start the course in September to a supervisor, and then they sort of allocate, their version of a dissertation supervisor to us, so that we're able to communicate with them, and they help us along the process. So it's guided, but there's a lot of independent study to do as well. So again, in Sem 1, we do something called theory behind teaching and learning, and what that does is it builds upon the knowledge that you've already learned in fundamentals of education, and it sort of applies it in context, really. So it covers things like the socio-cultural, psychological, and philosophical paradigms that sort of underpin teaching. So things like work-based learning, like how do we learn on clinical placements, understanding socio-demographics and context. So things like, all aspects of diversity, things like professionalization. So yeah, that's that module. This is a module that's done throughout Sem 1 and Sem 2. So we had a few lectures focusing on how to develop our teaching skills. It was it was delivered through some lectures, but it was mainly practice, because every Monday now we teach first years bits of the clinical examination. So they're all in the PBL groups, and we get assigned 2 PBL groups every Monday to teach, but we're teaching them online. So that poses a lot of challenges. So I think this Monday I was just teaching an abdo exam, or part of it, to a first year. And it was challenging because you need to find creative ways to do new things. So although it has been affected by COVID, I think it's actually improved my teaching skills and something I wouldn't do before. So yeah, so far we've done abdominal examination, cardiology examination, respiratory examination. We can't do joints online. We were going to do elbow and shoulder, but it's kind of hard to do online. But the next one will be cranial nerves, but that's supposed to be in person, so that'll be a bit different. So but yeah, so I've really enjoyed this module. I think it's been my favorite one, because you get to reflect upon what you've done and implement it for the next time. So this is a module I'm doing currently now. So it focuses more on assessment and evaluating those assessment techniques throughout the curriculum. So for example, we just did something called blueprinting, which is just sort of setting what should be included in assessment and how to choose, and what to, things you don't consider as a medical student. So that's just the modules. How are we assessed? So it's mainly through essays. There was lots of essays, which is unfortunate, because you're coming from, well, I don't know, I think it took time to get used to, mainly because you're used to sort of not writing any essays. The longest thing you've written is an SAQ answer in a long time. So it's difficult, but you get used to it. You also assess via portfolio. So we have to do a combined portfolio, which just includes a reflective log of everything that went on throughout the course. And we put forward a forward plan afterwards, saying what we want to do. So I had an essay exam about a couple of weeks ago, which is on the fundamentals of education and the theory behind teaching and learning. It was about 4 questions, like 25 marks each. It sounded daunting. I did that online as well, but yeah, it was it was interesting. But it's it's different. And then there's also the research project, which you get assessed on, which forms your dissertation. So, like, pros and cons of the course. So, you know, it's forced me to think critically. So it's forced me to sort of analyze my own teaching experiences in more depth, and, you know, evaluate, oh, okay, this is what was good about it, but why was it good? How could it be better? So it sort of drives me mad a little bit. Like, when I go back to this, then I'll be like, oh, we should be taught this way instead of the way we're being taught. But that's kind of the aim of the course, really. It's developed my reflective skills quite a bit. So you learn how to reflect a lot, because there's a huge emphasis on that. And reflection is really important in terms of how you're going to improve going forward, which I didn't actually recognize until I did this course. I'm able to implement what I've taught. That's mainly through teaching and the opportunities I've had during that. And it's interesting sort of using those skills, like, you know, building up upon prior knowledge that a student might use, you know, and how to utilize that in terms of small group teaching. And you're exposed to a lot of different teaching methods, because you have the chance to observe other people teaching, including other students, and you kind of get to steal the nice ideas, which is always good. But yeah, I mean, also you meet a lot of different people. So, I mean, there are some people from Barts, some people from King's, one person from Southampton, UEA. So you learn a lot about different curriculums and how different people are, you know, are taught, and the differences, which I think is, you know, quite enlightening. So, you know, you're working alongside these people as well. But again, as I said before, it took time to getting used to writing a lot of essays, as well as the PBL format. For me, I wasn't used to it, so it's nothing like Belbin. It's very different, and there are pros and cons to PBL as well. But eventually, I enjoyed it, which is the main thing. And there's also a lot of reading to do. So, you know, reading a lot of papers from different theorists can be tiring, but I think you know, if you have that motivation of what you want to learn, and then it's fine. You kind of like it in the end. So my experience, like, so far, except from what I've said, as I said, it's been like skewed by COVID, but it was a bit hectic at first. I kind of missed my first week, because of the way that Leicester positioned our end of third year exams. That was annoying, but, you know, I caught up, and it was okay in the end. It's different because it's online. You sort of, you know, you wish a lot of it was in person, especially the group discussions and the PBL. But, you know, I've gained a sound understanding in you know, educational philosophies, which is the main thing, and I think I've learned how to apply it to teaching, which is what my goal was coming into the medical education degree. So I think I've achieved that, but, you know, I've also learned that there's always things you can improve upon. And yeah, so medical education is not perfect, but like, just generally. But I think, you know, I think my dissertation supervisor said to me, oh, when the people who do, you know, medical education degrees, like, rise up in terms of the ranks, then we can incorporate some change to it. So hopefully that inspires some of you. If you don't like the way Leicester's teaching you, then do a medical education course and change it. So this is what other people have said as well. So I asked a couple of my colleagues to sort of fill in, sort of give a quote. So again, they're just saying it's interesting, how it's such an important skill to have, and again, mentioning the essays. Yeah, I mean, yeah, so the colleagues, you know, the tutors are lovely as well. They literally treat us as if we are colleagues. In fact, they call us colleagues when we're teaching with them. So yeah, I mean, you know, we think about medicine differently as well. So, because we're learning how to learn. But yeah, I mean, that's my experience so far. That's my email. If anyone's got any further questions they don't want to say later on. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. That was really insightful. Very eye-opening. So our final speaker tonight couldn't make it with us in person, but they recorded a video beforehand to share their experiences.
Hi everyone, sorry I can't be with you in person today. I've been lucky enough to be chosen to do some of the vaccination clinics over in Nottingham. So hopefully I'll be able to talk to you a bit about my medical education and intercalation via the beautiful method of Zoom. But if any of you do have any questions, because obviously I won't be there in person to answer them, please do feel free to email me. My student email is hv30 at student.le.ac.uk, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have based on the sorts of stuff I'll tell you today. So firstly, I was asked to talk a little bit about the course structure. We'll start with a little bit about me. So as I said, my name's Harriet Virley. I'm a 4th year student currently at Leicester Uni. I'm on my obs and gynae block, the beautiful black scrubs. And I intercalated in between my 3rd and 4th year. So I'd done 1 year of clinical placement, and then I chose to intercalate at the University of Nottingham, where I did a master's in medical science, specifically in medical education. And I did have a really positive experience there, so I'll tell you a bit about that. Firstly, a bit of background to doing that intercalation. I was actually the first medical student to do that specific course as an intercalation. It's not advertised as one, but the course convener, Dr. Patel, I got in contact with him and basically expressed my interest. He asked a bit about how I'd been performing at Leicester Medical School, and then there was a bit of an interview, and then he was lovely enough to offer me a place on the course. So it did actually run for the full year, so I did have to liaise with the medical school to make it clear that I needed time off before I started my clinical placement back in 4th year. So it did involve a lot of organisation, because as you can imagine, putting a year's masters into what was basically 8 months plus a COVID pandemic took a bit of organising, but both Nottingham Uni and Leicester Uni were really helpful with that. So yeah, a bit about the course structure. So because I was trying to fit to that kind of smaller timeline of doing a full master's, not an intercalated master's, but in an intercalated timescale, it did limit me slightly on the modules that I could have chosen. So I just made sure that the modules I chose were heavily kind of autumn semester based. So from September to Christmas, I was a very busy bee, which meant I had a lot more time to focus on my dissertation after Christmas. And there were absolutely loads of optional modules. So they had 3 core modules, which were based around kind of teaching and learning principles. And those are ones that everybody did, regardless of whether or not they were doing kind of a diploma certificate or the full masters. And then on top of that, I think it was 4 extra modules that I took, and also the dissertation piece. So the extra modules I chose were one surrounding ethics and professional development. I did one on technology enhanced learning, which coupled really nicely with the iPad program that we have in Leicester. I did one on research methods because I was completely clueless, having never used the library. So that one was really helpful. What else did I study? And I did learning in the clinical environment. So kind of the theories behind why we're expected to learn kind of on ad hoc situations on wards, when actually lots of the evidence does say that there needs to be more structured teaching behind that. But there were loads more, and I'm sure if you were to Google it, you'd find them all, and they're kind of ever changing. So absolutely loads of options there, which was one of the reasons I was really drawn to the Nottingham course in particular. So next, why did I choose medical education? That's a good question, and it's quite a multifactorial answer. I, like lots of people, have kind of reached the point in my medical school training now where I'm looking a bit further ahead. I'm starting to think, what will the life of Harriet look like in 10 years' time? What do I see myself doing? And I think I've realised as I've gone through medical school that it is still quite an important priority to me that I have enough time for family commitments and friend commitments. And I actually had a really fab primary care placement in my 3rd year, where I was attached to the lead of medical education for West Midlands. I saw his timetable where he managed to have a few days of clinical commitment in the general practice setting, and a few days of teaching commitments in the university setting. And he seemed to have lots of fingers and lots of pies. He just, he managed exam boards and all sorts really. And I think variety for me going forward will be really key to stay interested. And he also as well had 2 young children that he actually saw, which was quite an inspiration to me. I thought that sounded like a bit of a game plan. Also as well, kind of throughout medical school and then throughout my sixth form kind of years, I've kind of done as much revision societies as I can and teaching societies. I really enjoy it. As you can probably tell from this recording, I talk a lot. So I like to imagine that hopefully it will be kind of another string to my bow going forward, in whatever specialty I choose, to also have a teaching element to it as well. So that's kind of the main reason I chose medical education, on the one hand. And then on the other, if I'm being completely honest, I was feeling slightly burnt out by medicine. So I came to medical school straight from school, and it's been a lot of books and a lot of exams, as you guys are well aware. And I needed something that was completely different and tested me academically in a completely different way. So, we know we can sit exams, we know we can learn scientific content, biochemical mechanisms. I can train my brain to remember, and we've been doing that since A-level. But I was really interested to try a subject that was more essay-based, that was more research-based, that was slightly more independent and self-led. So actually, I kept calling it my gap year, which all of my home friends were like, Harriet, it's a master's, it's not a gap year. But it felt like a gap year to me. I was kind of running off the ethos that a change is as good as a break. And having had that change rather than a break for the past year really did mean I've come back into fourth year and kind of got my renewed love for medicine. So I felt like I had like proper time out from kind of the treadmill of exams and science content and all that good stuff. We'll soon see whether or not I've forgotten all that science content, having been out of the game for a little while. But so that was the other reason. So kind of career path, and then also for me now, what did I need? And then why Nottingham? Well, the course was fab, and I have family there. I fancied a different city for a year because, as you guys know, we signed up to Leicester for 5 years anyway. But it also wasn't too far away, was it really? So I'm a bit of a home bird. Just choose all of the Midlands unis. So that's why I chose medical education. So pros and cons of the course. I feel like this one's slightly tricky to answer because I did do my intercalation whilst coronavirus kicked off. So an obvious con of the course was that it all got absolutely shifted online. I was really enjoying my face-to-face. I was working amongst kind of doctors from all sorts of specialties, and it was fab for networking. So when that shifted online, I did miss that face-to-face content, but that's not a fault of the course. That's to be expected. Pros of the course included I had no exams, which was lovely. So I enjoyed my Christmas completely guilt-free. That's a lie. I had one stats exam, but it was like so fine. It was like population science, but like beginner's edition. So if you've listened to Ron Sue's lectures at all, you'd be fine. So that was a massive pro. So I didn't spend my time revising. There was a lot of writing and even more reading, but it was all done on my own time. So a massive pro of my intercalation was that I worked a lot. So my bank account was definitely grateful. I said yes to all of the social invitations, and wasn't worried about needing to make it to an 8am ward round. I got the opportunity to research whatever I wanted in the medical education field. And the team are still supporting me to get that published, which is pretty cool. There were all sorts of opportunities, to be honest, and even ongoing now. The convener still messages me and offers things for me to get involved with. So in terms of networking, it was fab because I wasn't with other medical students. So the doctors I met on that during that year still message me now and with opportunities or just checking in. So that's really lovely. So that's been like some massive pros. And then finally, I'll stop waffling on. Main takeaways from the course. I think especially in the first few months, I really enjoyed the opportunity to start to question why we're taught how we're taught, and the implications of that. Some of the stuff they showed me, I guess I'd never stopped to think that the way we're taught in medical school is so in so much contrast to how actually the research and the evidence base says that humans in general learn best, and yet they're all kind of these secret hidden curriculum and code that we pick up on throughout our medical training. But actually, even just things like turning up to a ward round and knowing who to introduce yourself to and knowing who to be smiley to, and the emphasis that there is on kind of peer support and around exam time, how we learn to pass these exams with very little structured guidance. And even more so going forward, now we're on this kind of virtual learning platform, adapting to that when actually, all the evidence base shows that you need face-to-face and you need your peers for support, and we all have very little of that now. So having the opportunity to question those things was really exciting. Like, I literally spent the first few weeks basically with my mouth open, just like, oh yeah, why do we take that for granted? So that was really cool because I'd spent loads of years just accepting that this is the science. Somebody else has worked this out, get it in your brain. And so there was none of that. There were, very few facts and a lot of debate and discussion, which was fab. And I guess the other takeaway message is I'm still not sure what I would like to do when I graduate. I don't imagine that's going to change anytime soon. But I do feel like medical education as an intercalated degree hopefully will open up lots of doors regardless of what I go into. So I really don't feel like I've shoehorned myself in to a specific specialty. I really am hopeful, and lots of the people I was working with have told me that to have medical education kind of on your CV really does open up doors regardless of what you go into. So So that was kind of my experience. I remember before I intercalated asking lots of the old years, saying, should I, shouldn't I? Is it really worth it? And everyone saying, oh, it's the best year, like definitely do. So I would try and avoid sounding like a broken record, but now I've done it, I really do see why they were as enthusiastic as they were about it. So I would definitely say if you're considering it, really do consider it. It was fab, and the thought of graduating, so if I hadn't have done it, I'd be graduating this year, and I definitely, looking back, I wasn't ready to do that, and now I've come back into medicine, not that I was shy before, but I do feel a kind of a different level of confidence going into those clinical environments, having taken that year just to have a bit more about me, really. So like I said at the start, if you have any questions about anything that I've said, please do get in contact with me. That's so fine. Best of luck with all your choices. And if you do go to Nottingham, feel free to give Dr. Patel away from me because he is the best human. Okay, then take care, guys, and I hope you all stay safe. Bye.
Although I know Harriet isn't here, but just a huge thanks to her for recording that beforehand, and thank you, Anam, for sharing that with us as well. So now we're open to any questions. So for Alistair or Umang, so you can either use the chat or you can also talk. Both is fine. Or any general comments as well. Doesn't have to be questions.
I think while people might be typing away in chat, I certainly have a question. So it was I think alluded to in some of the talks that from what you've learned, maybe some of what we're taught in Leicester isn't the most efficient. So could you maybe expand on that? Like, what's bad about Leicester, or what have you learned that should be changed?
Okay, I think I saw Alistair pointing to me. Yeah, so I mean, in terms of Leicester, I was thinking more about the clinical placements and how the clinical placements are organized. I feel like it's very hard to learn from clinical placements and know what to learn and know what to expect. We're sort of thrown into this environment, and and it's new to us, and we don't know what to expect, right? But I like this theory of situated learning, which is basically you take into account the whole environment. So you take into account the interactions that a medical student might have with each doctor, and all the other professionals in the team. And there's something called a longitudinal curriculum, where you follow a patient from, let's say, from their presenting complaint all throughout their different areas of care. So you might, see them in a GP as a presenting complaint, and you can take a history from them, and then you can maybe see them and then maybe you can see them in theatre if they need something to be done, and then you can see them post-op, and that kind of provides a more integrated level of care where you're sort of integrating everything together, and it gives you more like sort of respect for the patient, but you're learning a lot more because you're participating a lot more. So I think learning through participation is really important, and it's something that in Leicester it's hard to do if you don't have the opportunities. So that's my clinical placement sort of thing. So if I give an example, my medicine block was 9 weeks long. Each week was a different speciality, and it's you don't have time to get used to that environment. So how can you participate and how can you learn? It's hard to. You end up doing all the learning by yourself. But yeah, I mean, that's my opinion. Other people might have different opinions, but yeah, I don't know if Alistair has anything to add on that.
I do, but I'm not going to, just in case any of you do my study. I don't want to introduce bias by giving you my opinion. So but I'll talk about other things. I mean, like, so I'll talk about the lecture. Like, you all sit there in a room that people talk at you. I remember one time in pathological processes, there was like 3 hours where they were just talking at us with no break. It's well known that to study, you need some kind of interaction. You need to test. There's a thing called the testing effect. You need to test people. You need to challenge them to use their working memory in order to really learn things. Everyone comes in and you use notes and you write stuff down in your lectures. Actually, the part of your brain that writes the things down is the same part of your brain that reads the stuff on the lecture side. You can't really do two at once. It's not really possible. You're either focusing on one or the other. And I wish I'd known that, because I wouldn't have written streams of notes and missed loads of stuff in the lectures. You need regular breaks. Every 25 minutes, you need a break, really. You need discussion. You need quizzes and interactivity. People don't know the theory, or people ignore the pedagogical theory that doesn't relate to medicine, because I think some people look down on it. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be improved, and there's too much tradition in medicine. We say we follow the evidence, and we might when it comes to certain aspects of actually practicing medicine and treating people, but we don't do that for some reason when we teach, and we don't train. Like, every doctor teaches us. We just get thrown on a ward, and some random guy who doesn't know anything about teaching is somehow the one that ends up being responsible for giving us lectures. Like, what is that about? So yeah, I'll stop ranting now. Our teaching isn't evidence-based. It's based in tradition, and I think that needs to change.
Thank you. That's really interesting. Sorry, continue.
I was just gonna say, my face when you were speaking, Among, wasn't about you. It was trying to find 3 words to describe my year. Work in progress. I don't know. It's not over yet. Go on. What did you have? Something you wanted to say?
Oh, me?
Sadiq was about to talk.
Oh no, I was just going to ask the question, 3 words to describe your year, but you've seen the message, so.
Sorry, I was on mute. Something you need to get used to as well. Teaching online has been really interesting. But yeah, I guess fun is the first word I would use. It's been really fun. I mean, I get to, like, before lockdown, you know, got to be at home, explore London again because I'm from London, you know, so it's nice, you know, I got to spend time with my friends and everything. So it was nice. So fun, sorry, you said 3 words, I'm ranting. Fun, insightful, but it's a lot of hard work. So that's how I describe it, really. Yeah.
I'd go for refreshing as my number one, because oh my god, it's just so nice not to be doing medicine for a year. Challenging, you have to really use your brain. I can't think of a third word. Lack of accountability. That's too many words. Like, you really do have to force yourself to do stuff. I can't just like be forced to wake up because I have to be in at 7:30 for a gynae ward round. Like, I have to motivate myself somehow to wake up. And personally, I find that really challenging. I'm one of those people that wakes up and like can barely open my eyes and I have to force myself out of bed. But as Umang said, I've got to spend more time with my partner. I've done gardening. It's like, in another way, it's really chilled out. Like, for me, I think my course sounds like it's even more chilled out than Harriet's and Umang's, because it's all me. You know, I choose how much I learn. I choose what I learn pretty much. I'm in 1 day a week. There's maybe 2 or 3 assignments per module, and that's really nice. And I couldn't see being a good doctor in the long term without some experience in medical school of research and education, now that I've got that. So I really do recommend, even if it's not this, that you do some kind of intercalation. So that's my 3 words. You're welcome.
Thank you. So next question, did either of you consider any other degrees for your intercalation?
Yeah, okay, so I'll go first. So I did. So I looked on the Intercalate website. It's like intercalate.co.uk. Sort of tried to find the ones that appealed to me. So, I mean, medical education was one. I also, for BARTS, you have to apply to 2. So I applied to that and global health. So I considered global health as a different option. But, you know, in terms of medical education, like, I felt like I was going to get more out of that, and it was more suited to what I actually wanted to learn. I also considered remote medicine at Imperial, but yeah, I mean, I didn't actually get accepted for that because there was only like 10 external spaces. But you know, they gave me something about respiratory medicine instead. But to be fair, I wasn't interested in doing respiratory medicine for a year. But yeah, I mean, I did, but ultimately I found out that, you know, medical education is sort of the best to do. I think it's one of the best integrated degrees. Yeah.
Well, I remember I also was interested in remote medicine as an intercalation or a similar topic. But actually, what's the biggest way of making a difference to developing society? Teach them how to practice medicine. So, you know, I also considered bioprinting. It's really interesting, but it's just very science-based. You need a background of engineering to do something like that as well, really. And like regeneration medicine as a whole, I find really interesting. But actually, right now, it's only really being used in orthopedics, and God, I really don't want to do that. So you have to consider the usefulness to your future career as well. And actually, up until 2 weeks before I was due to start medical education, I was going to do just a general research topic on something, but my supervisor, I didn't hear from them for like 2 or 3 months, and I messaged them saying, so have you cleared it with a medical school? And they were like, no. And they messaged me at 10 p.m. saying, actually, you need to email people and find out if you can do it. And Richard Holland said I couldn't do it. So they completely let me down. And in retrospect, I'm glad that happened, because I get to do research in this. So I get to learn exactly the same things I would have learned, just in slightly less time. So I have all that experience in my CV. I can put I've done research, and I might get a publication out of that research if I work hard. So I've got exactly the same opportunities, only I also learn how to do education, and I can put that on my CV, which, as Harriet said, does open doors in any career path that you choose in medicine. Yeah.
All right. That's really interesting to hear the other alternatives you had going. So how do you think you will change your working routine returning to medicine?
Okay, I don't know, it's going to be difficult to adjust really in terms of, from doing essays to going back into medicine. But first of all, I think like as like Alistair and like Harry was saying, it's like refreshing. So I think I'll approach it with a new mindset, which is the most important thing. Like I'll actually be more like internally motivated to do it. I think in terms of placement, I will try to participate as much as I can, really like not leave the ward round after, at 11 a.m. and think, oh, I need to go to the library or something, or not even do that, I'll go home. But I'll try and participate more because I feel like learning is participation. But again, that depends on the context of where your placement is and how much you have to learn. I think in terms of how I learn, well, I think group discussion is really important. So I really want to change that up. So it's like discussing with your clinical partners what you've learned and discussing what they've learned. You can learn through that really, and you learn the most through that. Well, that's what I believe. So I want to focus more on that rather than just writing notes, and learning from that. So I think elaborating on that knowledge is also important. So things like testing your knowledge, try to do that a bit more often. Yeah, just rather than focusing on writing notes, I'd rather try just to apply it in whatever way I can.
I'll just mirror that really. Like just reading stuff, it's not very good. It takes up a lot of time. There's this thing called the familiarity effect, which is that you read something and you've seen all the words, so you feel like you know it, but actually because you've not rehearsed it, it's not gone into your brain. So I'm never going to take notes, I don't think, again, unless it's something that I'm not going to be able to access in the future. Question banks, I'll just use question banks all the time. Capsule's great. Flashcards for things that don't appear on question banks. As Imang said, I think I always have learned best from things like talking to other people as well. Also, I think looking at humanism and looking at other factors that affect learning, I'll let myself off the hook a bit more often. The stress and the guilt that comes with forcing yourself to learn is really counterproductive to actually learning things and retrieving things. So I'll if I don't do stuff in one day, I won't feel as guilty because it means that I'm actually more likely to do it the next day. Also, I'll intentionally not do loads in one go because as you do more, less goes in. I'll do the same amount, but I'll space it out every couple of weeks. I'll learn one topic and then go to another topic, which is called interleaving, because the evidence shows that that's far more effective. So basically, I'll do less, really. I'll just make it more efficient and feel less bad about not doing as much. Yeah.
Those are really important lessons, actually. It's really interesting to hear how that's going to change. Like doing this degree is also just changing the way that you go through the rest of medical school. That's great. I have a question. So after doing your intercalated degree, do you feel encouraged now to do something teaching related going into your medical career?
Yeah, so I definitely do. I think again, like seeing medical educators, seeing how they've taught us, I think I feel motivated to even become a CTF in the future, something like that, mainly because I think I like the way that we've learned before. I sort of want to change that in some sort of way. So I think having that lifestyle as well, where you're able to change stuff, you can be a GP on the side, and you have a lot of free time. So I think it's more my desire to want to change things that I wanting medical students to learn, not the way I want them to learn in per se, but the way that the evidence sort of says is the best to learn, and why we're not doing that. Again, like Alistair was saying, it's all traditionally based, not evidence based. So I think some real change does need to occur. I know I sound a bit like, I guess, like a revolution, but not really. But yeah, I don't know. I think it has inspired me, in short.
I was thinking too much about what Imang was saying. I forgot what the question was. What was it?
Has doing this intercalated degree encouraged you to think about doing teaching going into medical?
Yes. I think I'd never really, even up to the point where I was thinking about the degree, it had only been a satellite thought that I might want to do that. Teaching in some ways can be like performance, and I really like that element of it. I find that really fun, and I think the more I've gone through medicine, the more I've realized that, because I like most people, I started medicine, obviously I didn't say interview because for some reason they hate it, but I went into medicine to make a difference to people. And you do make a difference to people as a doctor, just caring in a very direct way. But the biggest difference that you can make in medicine is through research that changes the way people practice and through educating better doctors. So taking a step back and viewing it like that, yeah, I do want to take a role in education. And selfishly as well, it's just good to sometimes have something else to do and to take a bit of a break from just the millstone of what a doctor's life is when you're just caring for patients. So it's nice to know that at any point I have this, experience that I can just be a CTF for a year and do something completely different, or go abroad and help educate doctors abroad and make some difference in other places in the world. So yeah, and I mean, even if you don't do any of that, you will be teaching as a doctor no matter what you do. So it will always be a skill that will come in useful.
Thank you. That's nice to see. I mean, I'm considering it, but still think about it. Are there any other questions? Or I think you're welcome to speak up if you have questions.
Thinking of it in a selfish way, you get to do research, you get the point, well, you don't get points anymore, but you get that experience. You get to say that you know loads about education, which is, those two things are two of the main other things people look for other than you being a skilled doctor. You get a master's, that in and of itself is lots of career points. You potentially get another teaching certificate alongside, more points. So thinking of it just selfishly, it's just a really efficient master's to do, and it's pretty chilled as well. So yeah, I'd recommend it.
I think you guys have swayed me more in that direction. Yeah, more seriously considering it, definitely. So I think that's all the questions. So just want to say a huge thank you again for our guest speakers to coming to our event. And I mean, if you guys have any other extra questions that haven't been answered tonight, just message one of us, or I think they've both given emails as well. But yeah, let us know. Yeah, thank you so much for coming. And I hope everyone has a lovely evening. Oh yes, also email is in the chat. And yeah, see you all in our next event. Bye.
Bye, thank you.